It is just preparing to stream, and I'll give you the go ahead when it's up and at 'em. All right, looks like we are up and at 'em, so thanks all for joining us. I will pass control to you guys.
All right, thanks, Eli. Welcome everyone to the Alaska DOT and PF Transportation Alternatives Process and Guidebook Overview. My name is Julius Adolphson, and I serve as the Acting Multimodal Planning Chief. And over the past several months, my colleagues at DOT and PF and I have been working to refine the TAP process, streamlining how it works, and strengthening the selection criteria and improving transparency. We're here today to introduce the new updated TAP guidebook, which reflects recent program changes. The guidebook is designed to inform the public and stakeholders about how DOT and PF administers the program and select projects through a transparent, objective, and consistent process. And with that, I'll turn things over to Jason Bernat with High Street Consulting, who will walk us through the refined TAP process in more detail. So, Jason, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Julius. And thank you for everyone joining and who will be watching this recording later. I wanted to provide an overview of the topics that we'll cover at this meeting. We'll start with providing an overview of the TAP program and some resources that can help you understand the program a little bit more. And then we'll review what project readiness means. So what it means to ensure that a project is ready to be submitted to the TAP program. We'll talk about how those applications are submitted and how they are evaluated, and then what happens afterwards. Along the way, we'll provide some opportunities for questions. And for those in attendance, feel free to add any questions into the chat at any time. We'll get those answered as we can, and then we'll also review those questions and answers at those question touch points through the presentation. All right, so a little bit of overview information on the TAP program. It is a federal transportation funding program. It provides funding for community-based projects that expand travel choices and improve the quality of the transportation system. It has a distinct purpose to support projects like sidewalks, bike facilities, multi-use trails, safe routes to schools, and other non-motorized infrastructure. TAP as a program emphasizes safety, accessibility, connectivity, particularly for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other vulnerable roadway users. I've provided some links to resources that exist. So the League of American Bicyclists provides some really easy to understand information about the TAP program. FHWA also provides guidance. It's been removed from their TAP program site, but here within the presentation, I've linked to an alternative source that provides that federal guidance. So TAP is an interesting federal program because it has a wide range of project eligibilities. Everything from trails, sidewalks, bike lanes are included. So what most folks think of when they think of bike ped infrastructure. But TAP also funds community enhancements such as historic preservation, environmental mitigation, such as vegetation control, safe routes to school programming and education, and other non-motorized improvements. The TAP program also includes conversion of abandoned rail corridors and amenities such as scenic overlooks, viewing areas, and turnouts along highways. So as Julius mentioned, there is a new TAP guidebook in a draft form and available for review and public comment. There is a public comment period. It's been active since August 18th, 2025, and it will be open until October 17th, 2025. So you can review the draft TAP guidebook at DOT and PF's TAP program website. The link is provided here. And you can provide comments to tap.dot@alaska.gov. And we'll be accepting comments through October 17th. So Julius touched on this, but the new TAP guidebook was created for several reasons. First, to help communities, especially those with fewer resources and staff capacity, to understand what projects are eligible within the program and apply with confidence, making sure that they understand the program, understand the projects that are eligible for funding, and be able to submit an application. The guidebook provides clear and consistent guidance to strengthen those applications and improve clarity and reduce delays around that. The updated TAP project selection criteria is detailed within the TAP guidebook, and that is helpful to know because it'll ensure that you're submitting a project that will compete well within the program. The TAP process includes 3 major phases. The first phase includes rolling announcements. So this means project sponsors can have their projects ready, identified and ready to apply. The first step of that is submitting the notice of intent to apply. This alerts DOT and PF planners to the fact that you have a project and that you want to apply to the TAP program. Those DOT and PF planners will conduct initial screening to make sure that your project meets minimum federal program requirements, that it's an eligible project type, and that it'll be ready to move forward should it receive funding. Phase 2 covers the full project application and evaluation process, and this includes submitting detailed proposals with information that then will be reviewed both by DOT and PF planners and also the Project Evaluation Board. And that's phase 3, which includes that Project Evaluation Board assessment and then the determination of which projects will move forward and receive funding awards, and then gets into implementation next steps. So we'll go into a little bit more detail of each step within those phases. So I mentioned in phase 1, the rolling announcements and submitting the notice of intent to apply. So you can do that by going to the DOT and PF Transportation Funding Opportunity Hub. That link is provided here in this presentation. You'll create a hub account. Just note that only one registered representative per eligible entity, local government, can access and submit. So check around, make sure that no one else has already signed up for the Transportation Funding Opportunity Hub when you get ready to submit. Once the information for the notice of intent to apply is submitted, DOT and PF will review that in accordance to a simple screening rubric, just making sure that those minimum federal program requirements are satisfied. And here's a look at that project screening rubric. So it's fairly straightforward, yes, no, to 4 questions here. And this is really meant to ensure that the project is ready to move forward. Things like making sure that the local project sponsor has a identified local match for the project, making sure that the project is feasible in terms of its implementation, making sure that you know, things like right away utility coordination, if that's applicable, kind of some of those nitty-gritty details are identified early on to make sure that that project's not going to hit a stumbling block later on in the process, which can be frustrating both for the project sponsor and those involved. So the project advancement is pretty simple. If the project meets all those minimum requirements, the DOT PF area planners will notify you that your project has been advanced, and you'll be welcome to submit a full project application. If your project doesn't pass the screening step, area planners will offer suggestions for alternative funding opportunities and help you with your project and see if there's alternative opportunities out there. So I'm going to pause here. We put the steps back up here just for review, but we'll pause here for questions. And I know Amy's been monitoring the chat. So Amy, how's the chat looking?
Good. We did get a question from Irene. I don't know if you can see it, but it says, so we submit a project concept, then do the NOAA correct? How are we prompted to complete the NOAA?
Sure. So the NOAA is handled through the Transportation Opportunity Hub. So that serves as the notice of intent to apply. And that's done through the Transportation Funding Opportunity Hub, and Julius has dropped that link in the chat.
Great. Looks like Jenny would like to ask a question. Jenny, I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So on step 1, it says rolling announcements. Does that mean the announcements of the availability of the time window to submit a notice of intent is going to roll out over time, or is it just open on a rolling basis? So if you could just define what rolling announcements mean, that would be helpful.
It's a good question. So it means that an eligible project sponsor can submit a notice of intent to apply to the Transportation Funding Opportunity Hub at any time. And the project will kind of live there until DOT and PF has available TAP funding to be able to move forward with evaluating those projects. In my understanding, the Transportation Opportunity Hub is that if you submit your project there, it can be assessed for other funding opportunities. And so DOT and PF has developed that funding opportunity hub for that purpose.
And if I may just add as well, I believe you're able to, if there's any new developments with that projects, for example, if you've done an SSE or something like that and would like to update those numbers in the intake form in the NOIA, I believe you should be able to do that as well. And so if there's any new developments, you can always go back, log into the Transportation Funding Opportunity Hub and update the project accordingly.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions or comments on these 3 steps. So Jason, if you want to kind of go to the next phase, I'll keep a watch. And if you have a question that comes up later, we'll continue to take those throughout. So.
All right. We'll continue on to the phase 2 of the TAP process. So this includes the opportunity to have an optional pre-application meeting with DOT and PF area planners. So this means, you received your kind of invite to submit a full project application. If upon reviewing the guidebook and the project selection criteria, you have questions, especially if your project has some complexity to it, and you really want to understand the application process and how best to reflect your project in the application, you can meet with DOT and PF area planners, and they'll help you guide you through that initial process of submitting an application. So you will also submit your full project application through the hub. So the hub acts as kind of a one-stop shop for all of the TAP application activity. Following submittal of your application, DOT and PF area planners will determine whether you need a fully developed scope, schedule, and estimate based on the context of your project, how complex it is. The reason for that is in the past, kind of a stumbling block has been on understanding how much the project will cost. And so by introducing the scope, schedule, and estimate step here, DOT and PF can help project sponsors further develop projects, understand project risks, and make sure that the project estimate is as accurate as it can be at an early stage like this. And that helps with just making sure that the project, should it be awarded, can move more quickly to implementation. And it also helps DOT and PF make sure that they can program TAP funds as efficiently and optimally as possible. So this table represents the TAP project selection criteria. There are 4 main focus areas. This includes fiscal considerations, so things like the local cash contribution, understanding of the ownership of the facility or infrastructure to be created, who's responsible for the maintenance and operations, making sure that facility has a maintenance and operation plan in place so that it can remain functional and operational in the future. And then an assessment of the quality of estimate, cost estimate. So just making sure that the project costs are reasonable within the realm of in the ballpark in terms of accuracy. And that's where the scope, schedule, and estimate step can help come in place for more complex projects. Under economic need, we take a look at the median household income within the project area, and projects are prioritized to help ensure that areas that have more economic need have a better chance of receiving a TAP project. Under community support, we look for evidence of public involvement and support, so making sure that there's a lot of community backing behind this, and this can include from community stakeholders, elected officials, just making sure that there's a lot of positive goodwill behind the project at the local level. Ensuring that the project is aligned with a local, tribal, or state plan. So it's really helpful to ensure that this project isn't coming out of anywhere, but it's been thought of. It's come through a local or a planning process that included community input. And then finally, we look at the proposed scope of work, specifically the technical quality of the project scope. So really understanding what the project purpose is, what the project is, and how well the project fulfills that purpose. So the next steps here, steps 6, 7, 8, and 9, include some of the evaluation process steps. So once the DOT and PF area planners evaluate the projects according to the selection criteria we just reviewed, there's a check for scoring standardization. So there's different people, different districts, different areas assessing these projects. The Data Modernization Innovation Office within DOT and PF can actually review those project scores to ensure that there's not any bias within the scoring of the projects, and making sure there's consistency throughout those reviews. So it just serves as a good check. There's an additional field check review by field chiefs. The purpose of this is to, again, have another check on the consistency of the scoring, and also address any additional agency level considerations. For example, there could be nuances to some of the projects where they're better fit for other funding opportunities. And so should those manifest, the field check review can help direct those projects into an optimal funding source. The next step after that is advancing the highest scoring projects to the project evaluation board for further review. For project sponsors that don't advance to the project evaluation board, will be contacted by DOT PF area planners, and they will help the project sponsor identify other funding opportunities, or perhaps provide feedback on how the project that was submitted could be refined and be more competitive in a future TAP cycle. All right, we've reached another pause for questions. And so I'll hand it over to Amy to provide a run view if any questions came in through the chat.
Sure, we did have one. Can an applicant request a scope, schedule, and estimate so they are confident in a project budget?
I think that would be appropriate. There's opportunities to coordinate with DOT and PF area planners along the way. And I think depending on the project and the circumstances, I think that's reasonable. But I'll hand it over to Julius.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we would like to see in phase 2 that all applications have an SSE developed, and so that we are confident in our in the project cost and the project budget. However, there's also nothing, these SSEs are constantly made throughout our field offices for projects and so on as well. So if you are interested in developing one ahead of submitting a project, you can reach out to our different field offices and to the planning chiefs there, and I'll put a link to our contact information there as well, because there are, however, a cost associated, engineers' time, and cost associated with an SSE as well. So, but yes, there is a possibility of requesting an SSE prior to submitting a a application.
Looks like Jenny, you might have a follow-up question you'd like to ask. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I do. Yeah, that question was in response to the first set of steps. And in it, it said that DOT and PF will determine whether an SSE is required. And I just know that the costs associated with DOT executing the project is really different than a municipality executing a project. So it's a little challenging for municipalities to estimate accurately, not being the entity that has the expenses of that. So I just wanted to make sure that if we were to submit a notice of intent to award and you all look at it and you say, oh, great, we may only be putting up a portion of what we need to put up for match after it goes through SSE. So it's really good to know what DOT thinks it costs before we're committing match and all that, because that could radically change once you get into the project and you find out as a municipality that it's a lot more expensive than what went through the whole application approval and award process. So that's why I asked, can we request those even if our team determines that we don't need one? That's all.
And I think you can request those. You can reach out to our office, to the field office planning chiefs for that. We are also in sort of phase one. We are also trying to develop a planning level estimate tool that is basing, because we realize with determining the project cost and scope is something that is very tricky and has a lot of different parameters. And so we're looking at developing a planning level estimate, sort of scoping and schedule and estimate tool that could be used, that is based off of previous years' projects. And we might also have to add a couple of parameters there, because if you're on the road system, for example, you have access, your project cost might be significantly different than if you're in rural Alaska or remote Alaska as well. So great question, Jenny. And yeah, I'll drop the link here in the chat to our offices if you haven't already been in touch with our field office planning chiefs.
Thanks, Julius. I think that'll be helpful because that relates to Irene's comment here that she's had a similar experience. So I know other participants would probably appreciate that information too. Looks like, Jason, I think we may not have any more questions or comments on this section. So if you want to go to phase 3, and also we've had a few new people join, so just wanted to welcome them and let them know we're about to go to our next segment and we'll take questions. But if they have any questions about earlier portions, or we'll be happy to cover those as well.
All right. Well, and so far what we've discussed has been that initial notice of intent to apply through the Transportation Opportunity Hub, and that initial screening of TAP program project applications. We just talked about the invitation to submit a full TAP project application and the DOT and PF evaluation process that takes place, and the touch points between the area planners and the project sponsors. And now we're going to move from that set of evaluation to how projects get the review is finalized, and we get to project award decision making. So that's the phase 3, what we're going to talk about right now. So following the application review and using the project selection criteria and ranking the projects based on their scoring outcomes, DOT and PF creates project information package for the public evaluation board. And that information is sent to those members so that they can review the projects and get to know them and understand their applications and how they rank in terms of their score. PEB members are asked to actually independently score those projects using the criteria. So they each kind of review the projects on their own, and then they come together and they can kind of compare their thinking and approach on the projects. And when they meet, it's a kind of a consensus-based outcome. So a lot of the pieces of the application review are data-driven, and this final piece is coming together, understanding the projects, their scoring outcomes, weighing different considerations that may not fully be captured within the evaluation process. And then they provide the final project outcomes. So following that consensus meeting by the Public Evaluation Board, they provide a set of project recommendations to the DOT and PF commissioner. So it's a list of projects that say, DOT and PF has X amount of TAP funding. These are the top performing projects that fit within the available funding. These are the ones that we recommend to move forward. And the commissioner has the final authority to approve those selected projects. So once that happens, the DOT PF area planners will notify the project sponsors of the funding decisions, the outcomes. If for whatever reason a project that reaches this far does not make it all the way to commissioner approval, DOT and PF planners will offer debrief to those applicants to help them understand why and also identify possible other alternative funding sources and opportunities for that project, or how that project could compete better within future TAP cycles. And if a project is also successful, the project sponsors can also get a debrief just to understand, kind of, why their project performed well and how they can take some lessons learned there. Any projects that don't move forward will automatically be added to the DOT and PF needs list for future consideration. And that wraps up the phase 3 there. And so before we move on to talking about what happens after a project has been awarded, we want to pause here for questions on these steps 10 through 15.
Sure, we've got one. Is the project evaluation board consensus meeting a public meeting?
That's a good question. I think it is, yes, per our Alaska Administrative Code. It requires us to be a public meeting.
Right, and then kind of similarly, how often do the PEB meet? Is it a every 3-year cycle, or will they be scheduled on a rolling basis like the application process?
That's a good question. I think that's also a lot based on the commissioner's office, who sort of focuses on the when to announce a new application cycle, and so with the rolling basis, I can foresee that we might have more of rolling PEBs, so maybe not on the maybe not every 3 year, but more on a rolling basis. What the time for that rolling PEB might look like, I do not know, unfortunately.
And then we had kind of wanting to clarify, how is this different than the old PEB process? Is this just a new interface? Is that fair? Or are there any other major policy changes?
I guess the key difference is, and I'm gonna start and then Jason, feel free to jump in as well, but the key difference is to make the applications, the PEB process and the entire application cycle very explicit so that the applicants know what to expect. It has not been as clear in years past, so that's why we're trying to make this guidebook to make the entire process, including the PEB process, a little bit more clear to applicants so they know what to expect.
I would just add that, under the hood for the TAP program, the project selection criteria is really what drives the decision making. And that's very objective and data informed. But no one process can be fully, data driven. And so, of course, there needs to be oversight, based on just institutional knowledge and some other considerations. And so it's that updated, refined project selection criteria that is really meant to be align project selection with statewide planning goals, objectives, is really meant to kind of inform the process. And then from there, it's really about just kind of deciding which projects move forward in relation to the available funds.
Looks like that's kind of all the questions we have for this section. So if you want to go on to the last portion.
All right. So now we'll talk about if your project had received funding, what that looks like. So post-award, once you receive information or notice that your project has been funded, project needs to be programmed into STIP as a first post-award step. DOT and PF will administer the project in coordination with the local project sponsor. And then a memorandum of agreement, an MOA, is drafted between the DOT and PF and the local sponsoring agency. And that details the commitments such as the matching funds, the project cost, the estimate, and also, if applicable, considerations about maintenance and operation responsibilities of the newly constructed facility. We wanted to highlight some funding details before we wrap up. So for construction projects, there is a limit. It is up to $5 million per project. And then for non-construction projects, those are projects like Safe Routes to School programming, education, or non-motorized planning. Those project awards range between 50 and 200,000. In terms of the local match, the required match is that 9.03%, although that can range depending on certain circumstances. So DOT and PF area planners are the best people to help determine if there could be alternatives for that option providing local match. All right. So now we have covered the three main phases and all the steps in between for the TAP process, including that initial application, the full project application and kind of DOT PF internal focused review, the PEB board evaluation, the awards, and those post-award steps. So with that, I just want to do one last check and see if there's any questions about any aspect of the project, any points of clarification.
We just had one come in here. In the past, we gave a predetermined percentage of fund to the DNR for trail work. Will we still do that?
I think Irene might allude to the recreational trails program, which is a set aside of the transportation alternatives program. Yes, DNR, so Department of Natural Resources, are still managing the recreational trails program, and we can drop the link in the chat for that as well, because that might also be of interest to some of these applicants. They do have a certain percentage, I don't know it off the top of my head, that is devoted to motorized versus non-motorized. So the setup is a little bit different, but I'll drop the link in the chat to that program.
And Amy, thank you. I noticed that you dropped the link to the TAP guidebook. I do want to mention that on page 10 within the guidebook provides kind of a handy one-page overview of the TAP program, all the steps that we talked about here today. So it can be a handy guide in the future.
Yeah, I would back that up as someone who is kind of new to this program. I thought that was a great summary, and especially for those of you who've been listening to this presentation, it's probably a helpful refresher on the steps. I'm not seeing any more questions, but wanted to check in too. I know some people had to join a little bit later, which we appreciate your time. If you have any questions or would like us to maybe revisit some of the earlier portions of the presentation about getting your application started or how it's going to be evaluated, we'd be happy to spend these last few minutes kind of recapping some things too. So just let us know in the chat.
All right. I do have some next steps, so I can go ahead and bring that up. We just want to leave you with how you can stay engaged, but we can stick around to the top of the hour in case anyone does have any questions. Thank you for taking time to join us here today. So like I mentioned at the top of the meeting, the draft guidebook is available for public comment through October 17th. You can submit your comments at tap.dot@alaska.gov. You can also sign up for TAP updates at the public.govdelivery.com link. And if you select state programs and projects, you'll sign up for TAP updates you'll receive via email. And Julius, we have a note here about the next TAP call being under consideration. So just wanted to make note of that and see if you have any insights other than to stay tuned on that.
No new insights, unfortunately, on that. We're currently looking at our funding availability to determine a new the exact dates for the new cycles. So stay tuned, sign up for TAP updates on the website to make sure that you have the latest information on this. And yeah, please, if you have any other burning questions or comments, please submit your comments to tap.alaska tap.alaska.gov. We appreciate your being with us here today.
All right. And I see Mark had a question that was just answered with your note on the next tap call, Julius. So stay tuned, Mark, and sign up.
Did get a question from Romeo about where will the recording be posted?
The recording will be posted on our TAP website, along with this presentation and of course the guidebook as well. So please share that with any people in your networks as well that couldn't make it to today's meeting.
Well, that's all I'm seeing on here, so it looks like we've covered it and can wrap up a little early. Thanks for we did have some comments appreciating the overview and learning about the process. And it looks like we might have one more question actually
One
coming in.
more question.
The last call always gets, prompts some action. So it looks like each organization can only have one applicant, depending on the project. CBJ may wish to have a representative in the community development department if it's a planning project, or in Parks and Recreation if it's a trail project, or engineering and the public works department is if it is a right-of-way improvement. Could each department have an applicant?
So I think what Irene might, I think this is in step one when we mentioned it with the transportation opportunities hub as well, where we're looking at just having one account to the transportation opportunities hub per community. And so I would say, Irene, maybe that account for CBJ can be used by a variety of applicants, but within the city. But the keys to that login resides with maybe, for example, the city manager that might have to sign the actual application, or someone else. We just want to make sure that we have the correct information from one sort of applicant in the community. Does that make sense? And Jason, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, in the guidebook, it does state that each eligible entity can submit up to 2 projects for consideration. So there is a limit there by project by the submitting agency. And Julius, just thinking about kind of the providing the reasoning behind that is just to ensure that that funding is dispersed equitably statewide, and isn't concentrated in any one area.
Any other questions? All right. Well, be happy to close out the meeting a little bit early. And like we said, if you have any questions or can think of anything when you review the guidebook, please send them to this email here, or most of you also have my email address. So feel free to share those with us. And I would just like to say on behalf of Alaska DOT and PF and our team here, the project team, I would sincerely thank each and every one of you for joining today's session and for your thoughtful participation. Your engagement and feedback are invaluable as we work to improve the Transportation Alternatives Program and support communities across Alaska. And so if you have any further questions or comments, like I said, please don't hesitate to reach out. We appreciate your time and commitment and look forward to collaborating with you in the future. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.